The Magician and the Sorcerer. Story and pictures by David McKee. The Magician and the Sorcerer. Story and pictures by David McKee. Melrick the Magician and the King had been arguing for weeks. The King wanted Melrick to make him as powerful as the famous kings he had been reading about. "More power!" he shouted at Melrick. "I want to be known far and wide." "You are powerful enough," said Melrick. "More power will never make you happier, but you'll soon be known far and wide for your voice. That's powerful enough." "You're useless," the King would grumble. "You won't even do what I command." And so it went on, night after night. One morning, Melrick went to see the King and was surprised to see a feast was being prepared. "I have had a message that a sorcerer called Sondrak is coming to visit the palace," said the King. "Who is he?" "I don't know," said Melrick. "I have never heard of him." "Perhaps he isn't a real sorcerer at all." "And perhaps he is," said the King. "Perhaps he is friendlier than some magicians I know, and perhaps he is willing to make a nice little king just a teeny-weeny bit more powerful. Anyway, we're giving a feast in his honour, so there." Melrick wanted to know more about this sorcerer and decided to ask his sister Myrtle the witch. With the help of a travelling spell, Melrick was soon in her cave enjoying a cup of her special brew. Myrtle knew most people who had anything to do with magic, but she had never heard of Sondrak. "He could be someone pretending to be a sorcerer," she said. "We can soon find out with this." She gave Melrick a small box of powder. "Sprinkle some on his food. If he really can work magic, you will see a light above his head. An orange light for good magic and a blue light for evil. Try some yourself," she added, and sprinkled some powder on Melrick's seed cake. Melrick bit the cake and looked in the mirror. "I can work good magic," he murmured as he saw the orange light. "I should hope so," laughed Myrtle. "What did you expect?" Then, as Melrick was getting ready to leave, she brought a bird out from the back of the cave. "This is Crick," she said. "Take him, and if you need help, send him to Kra, the wise man who lives at the top of the mountain." The two arrived back at the palace just as the messenger came to tell Melrick that the feast was about to begin. Sondrak had arrived. When Melrick reached the feasting room, the King introduced him to Sondrak, who didn't seem very pleased. I see," he said. "What have we here? A magician." Melrick sat in his usual place to the right of the King. The feast began, and Melrick waited his chance. It came when the King was pointing out something of interest to Sondrak. While they looked the other way, Melrick slipped some powder onto the sorcerer's food. Sondrak took a large mouthful. A light appeared above his head, so he really could work magic. But the colour of the light was blue. Sondrak was up to no good. During the meal, the King asked Sondrak what he thought of a magician who refused to make his king more powerful. "A magician's job is to do what his king asks," said Sondrak. "For that, my dear Sondrak, I offer you a seat at my right hand, said the king. A magician's job is to help the king, and that doesn't mean giving him all he asks for willy-nilly, murmured Melrick as he changed places with Sondrak. Then he whispered to Crick, I think Sondrak will be after my job soon, too. You'd better find out what Kra knows of this sorcerer. So Crick left by the nearest window to fly with a furious flap to Kra's mountain. Kra usually protected his mountain with magic to stop visitors from dropping in, but Crick was able to fly straight to a rock beside Kra. I was expecting you, explained the wise man. Now about Sondrak. Kra knew everything. He knew why Crick was there even before the bird had a chance to speak. Sondrak is a wicked sorcerer looking for a land to rule. He wants to take Melrick's place. He will pretend to help the king, but instead he will rule the king and his kingdom. Will you help Melrick? Crick asked. If Melrick is to win his contest with Sondrak, then he must do it by himself, said Kra. But give him this advice. He must not forget the power of laughter. It was obvious that Kra had no more to say, so Crick flew back to the palace. The feast was over and nearly everyone had gone to bed, glad to have a peaceful night without the king shouting at Melrick. But Melrick was still waiting up for Crick, and he listened eagerly to what Kra had to say. The power of laughter, said the magician when Crick had finished. I don't know anything about the power of laughter, but I do like the sound of it. Then, still puzzling over Kra's words and wondering what Sondrak would do next, Melrick fell asleep. The next morning Melrick was woken by a noise outside his window. He looked out and saw Sondrak performing tricks in front of a crowd. Near Melrick the king was also watching. When Sondrak had everyone's attention, he set out to show just how powerful he was. I can destroy, he said, and with a flash from his hand crumbled a house into ruins. And I can build, he shouted. Another flash put the house back as it had been. The crowd gasped in amazement. Then Sondrak ordered 6 archers to shoot at him. The archers took careful aim and fired their arrows. They flew straight towards the sorcerer, but seemed to bounce off an invisible wall in front of him. Nothing hurts me, shouted Sondrak. He pointed one hand at the ground and the fire roared up. Then he pointed at the sky and rain poured down, putting out the fire. See what power I have, he shouted. Think how great I could make you a king. What could anyone do against me? Especially you, magician. Melrick looked at Sondrak standing on the edge of a puddle left by the rain and remembered Kra's words. He smiled and pointed at the puddle. The water turned to ice beneath Sondrak's feet. At once Sondrak started to slip and slide, and after flying through the air ended on the ground. The crowd roared with laughter. Stop laughing! Screamed Sondrak, who above all else could not bear the sound of laughter. He tried to get up, but his slipping and sliding antics made him look more than ever like a clown. How the crowd laughed! Sondrak put his hands over his ears and his feet shot from under him. Melrick pointed again, making the ice turn back into the dirty puddle just as Sondrak was landing. Splash! Up got a very wet and muddy sorcerer. Don't laugh! He howled. You were supposed to fear me. I was going to rule you and your king. His evil plan was out, but everyone just laughed and laughed. At last Sondrak crept away. "I'm going," he snarled at Melrick, "but you haven't seen the last of me." The king smiled. He suddenly felt much happier. "You're right, Melrick," he said. "I don't need more power." Then he ordered another feast, this time in Melrick's honour. Melrick was pleased that everything had worked out so well, but he couldn't help wondering if he would be troubled by Sondrak again.